explorations and conversations beyond the ordinary.
Welcome to Transpersonal Arts, passionate explorations beyond the ordinary. I am Dr. Lila Moore, one of the co-founders of this podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Inna Dulerain and MaryRita McGuire. Here we engage in insightful conversations that delve into the vast landscape of transpersonal arts, where creativity in its deepest sense intersects with both personal and collective transformation. In today's episode, we are exploring the divine feminine. We are curious about the term and what it may mean. We are also aware that we are just beginning to unveil the topic and that there may be more episodes, but we want to start somewhere. So we'll begin with a simple yet profound questions. One particular question that has no single answer and no singular way of approaching it. Each of us will share our perspective, knowing that our exploration is an open-ended journey. So let's begin with Inna. Inna, do you remember the first time you encountered the divine feminine? How did you recognize her as the divine feminine? Or did you have another name for her?
Oh, I remember this moment very well. First time it happened when I was meditating with a very kind of like close circle of like-minded people. And in this meditation, I found myself in a dark place, but it was not completely dark. It was breathing place of very, very subtle light. It like being in mother's womb. I think a child experiences this darkness in mother's womb when it's dark, but some light penetrates, kind of like, and it was so calm and peaceful there. In first time, I was staying there in darkness and was thinking, I'm not afraid. I'm in a darkness, and I always was kind of like panicking that why I'm in a darkness in my meditation. But this time it was like sacred moment of meeting something which is nourishing and absolutely safe. And next moment, this meditation, I was meeting her. I call her Great Mother. And I know that Divine Feminine has many names and has many kind of faces, and you can experience her very differently. But my first meeting was like I was again in a mother's womb, feeling the safety of womb of creation. And it was, and I was curious. I was thinking, oh, this is new feeling for me, being in the dark and feeling absolutely safe, and actually even more kind of being kind of growing in this place, kind of feeling that I can open up in this place. And since then, I was meeting her very often in my meditation. And what the most important, this period of time, I was making my show, Mythosphere. And it was show about magic. But when I started to do visuals for this show, and when I started to dig in symbols of the text of the drama I written, and it was mentioning of Grail, Holy Grail in my play. It is appearing in some moment. And when I start to dig this kind of like artifact or symbol, I discovered that it's much more ancient symbol of divine feminine. Actually, it's your kind of embodiment on earth, this cup of plenty, cup of virtue. It has so many names in different mythology, but it's a representation of divine feminine. And when all the way when I was doing this production, in my art, in my visuals, in my videos, were appearing these very powerful images of goddess. And the show was premiered in an Old Welsh chapel, where we made 11 meters high screen, and video projections were projected on this huge screen. And when on the rehearsal, when we do all the tags, the video of Divine Feminine was projected on this 11 meters high screen. You know, it was a moment of kind of like such a huge awe. And it was just a moment of meeting her, because I was feeling like, oh my God, she's here. And so for me, it's a journey of my life. And I was learning so much about history of her. And for me, it was a real discovery when I realized how much our myths were distorted, how much she was erased from the scriptures, from mythology. Her name sometimes is given to male demons in some texts, and she is demonized. She is kind of like really, it is like few thousand years of exhale of Great Mother. And what I see now, what's going on in minds and on our planet, I just see it's a result of this exhale, because we lost connection with what Great Mother represents. She represents land, nature, intuition, trust to inner voice, and actually nourishing, creation. We just lost this as a everyday practice, as our kind of knowledge which we're bringing up our children, like our kind of habits, our way to deal with life. And that's why I feel our meeting today and this conversation is so important. And I'm so happy to be here with you, knowing that you also know so a lot about it. And your art, Lila, has a direct connection with Great Mother and Divine Feminine, and lots of myths about Divine Feminine. Because I think it's needed to be done in peaceful, revealing way, what she really is, what she is bringing, what she's taking care in this world. She's still here. She's still here taking care of all of us, but she is not recognized. She is not connected with. And it's very important, especially for our girls, I think, to know who they are, to know what they can do. Because now we have, for example, one of the way emancipation, it's just turning themselves into men for women. They think that if they will be soldiers, if they will be kind of like bosses of huge corporations, that's mean they are kind of like equal to men. They should not be equal to men as in a masculine side. They should find their magical power of goddess inside them and find the way to bring those powers into the world. So that is a long work, actually, and lots of going on now. Sure, we know many people who are representing Great Mother and teaching about her, and lots of spiritual groups and some temples, like online temples. Yeah. But it is not about religion, actually. It's more about spirit, about connecting to this archetype, connecting to this power, connecting and being kind of like nourished by it. Not to go on a fight and a kind of, although so much trauma there, so much grief, so much pain there. But nowadays we should be responsible for what we are bringing. So we should do it in a gentle way.
It's actually very interesting to see our different perspectives, because I think it's going to be a very colorful conversation, because we're going to bring, different mirroring of the same experience, but from, again, various lenses. So I'll continue with my initial experience, because I feel that I've always sensed a special feminine presence since I started writing a diary, and especially science fiction stories. At the age of 10, and I can prove it. I've got it. I often mentioned her. Now, I wasn't consciously aware that she was a manifestation of the divine feminine, but I wrote intuitively, and creating female characters that carried a certain mystical significance. And I just found it yesterday and felt that I want to return to this story. It is my first science fiction story, which I haven't published yet. In this story, a young girl from another star or planet communicates with the protagonist, a young schoolboy. I named her Aura, meaning a light that surrounds the head and body. Aura takes the boy and his friend, a girl from his class, on a journey to her star aboard a flying saucer. On Aura's star, they discover strange places and characters, and one of them is the cave of the witches, an ancient place, thousands of years old, filled with natural lights in many different kind of bright colors. The witches who live there are covered in leaves, are wearing leaves. And Aura explains that long ago, a tribe attacked their cave and stole the book of spells. Without it, they forgot most of their magical wisdom. However, in the story, an old witch gifts the children and like a sacred object, telling them that it will protect them from all evil intentions. Yet the boy, the protagonist, finds it difficult to believe in her power and still harbors doubts. Now, I just read it again yesterday, and I felt very curious that me, as the writer, was kind of presenting the two sides of the coin. Yes, there is this cave of the witches, but then are they really real? And doubting their magic. And this is me as a child trying to negotiate what I was told and what I may imagine. So I think it's still relevant. Now, the other interesting aspect of it is that Aura, the girl from the star, is also a messenger, bringing a message to humanity via the children. So I won't reveal the entire story now, since I haven't published it yet after so many years. But the idea of a message coming from a feminine entity to the people of Earth feels incredibly timely. Looking back, I realized that I had an intuitive connection to the divine feminine from an early age, even though I wasn't fully conscious of her presence at the time. And of course, there are other stories and episodes, but yeah. And now, after I heard you, Inna, talking about that cave, that place of darkness, it just kind of corresponded with my image of the Cave of the Witches, which is, which I sort of imagined when I was 10 years old.
Incredible. I just wanted to say, Inna, the cave as well, that was a real strong image. And did you say that it was a Welsh chapel?
Yes.
That it was in? I was just imagining like you seeing the divine feminine, in this huge projection in this kind of space, really beautiful. And Lila, I would love to read your book when it's published. I'm
going to have to publish it. I was told that so many times and I just don't get to do it. But I feel that I'm going to have to also, because I didn't tell you the whole story. And there is a message there. And this message is really becoming extremely important. So it's not as if my book will save the world, but I think it needs to be out there.
Wonderful.
Especially as it may resonate with children and young people, because it was written from a perspective of a child.
And it's wonderful because, like you were saying, it was written so long ago.
Yeah.
But almost, this shows that time really doesn't work in a linear way. This is something that was created as a seed, and it's now that it's starting to come into what you feel is the time for it to be published.
Yeah, but the problem that I'm discussing in this story, there is a problem with the star. And the end is not a happy ending. It's quite frightening and traumatic. The children feel that no one believes them, and no one will believe their story. But the trauma at the center of the story is still going on in our world, the ongoing wars that we experience globally.
I just, I was just thinking about kind of coming together today. I know that you may not know that people who are watching, it's actually the spring equinox for us today as we've gathered. And, that's so beautifully connected to the divine feminine in so many ways. And because, it's this sense of spring. And if we go into the Celtic wisdom of Eostra, this time of fertility and this time of rebirth. And also that sense of, that the other side of the feminine, the winter side, the dark womb that you were talking about, Inna, the winter side of the feminine is now giving way to the more fertile expression. So as we're crossing into that threshold, so what a beautiful day to be kind of having this conversation. And also in astrological terms, we have the beginning of the astrological season. So that sense of going from the beginning of the zodiac and the 0 degrees of Aries, which is known as the creation degree. So again, we're coming into this place of rebirth. And it just makes me think about the different lenses of the divine feminine speaking to us through archetypes and through symbols and through these ancient systems, these esoteric systems. And really interestingly, Lila, my first experience of the divine feminine unconsciously was through a children's animation. And it was a story by Peter S. Beagle called The Last Unicorn. And I was 8 years old when I first saw this animation. And at the time, I probably didn't realize that this was the relationship that was drawing me back to the story. But there's one unicorn left in the world, and all the other unicorns have been banished into the ocean. And this unicorn has to leave her forest in order to find the rest of her kin. But when I kind of think about that story now, the unicorn being something pure of heart, this sense of purity, the sense of a divine essence. And the journey she goes on is that she eventually is turned into a real woman. So she loses the unicorn essence. So this is what I see as the divine feminine, and becomes a real woman. So has to experience the world through the physical realm, as well as kind of having an understanding that she used to be this pure form of herself. And as she goes through these trials and tribulations, one thing that's really beautiful is that there's an opportunity for her to have the fairy tale story, to marry the prince and to live happily ever after. That's not what she chooses. That's not what she chooses. She chooses to go back to the unicorn form in order to save the rest of her kind. And to me, it felt like this was the way the divine feminine has been pushed to the edges of the earth, has hidden away from humanity. And so when she steps out of her magical forest, no one recognizes her. They mistaken her for a horse. And so this idea that the divine feminine, this pure energy, isn't recognized by humanity anymore, and that it's kind of been driven away to the ends of the earth, somehow, as an 8-year-old, just touched something in my heart that ever since I watched that cartoon, I watched that animation every year, because I return to that story and I like to see it through the different eyes of my age. You know, when I've seen it when I'm 16 or when I've seen it now, you know, in my early 40s, it still touches me and I still feel a hugely emotional resonance. And when I discovered that it was a novel before it became an animation by an incredible writer called Peter S. Beagle, it sort of changed my whole relationship with the story. So that was kind of the first time that I'd seen the divine feminine coming through this archetypal form of this pure essence of a unicorn. And my second encounter was not so pleasant. My second encounter was actually when I was doing some work on the wounded masculine. So I was exploring the wounded masculine within myself and doing practices to kind of activate the wounded masculine. And as I was going on this journey to understand that part of me, what I wasn't expecting was that underneath this wounded masculine energy that I was working with was the forgotten feminine. And it was so powerful that it came through. And the way she showed herself to me through dreams and through story was through the archetypal goddess of Lilith. It was Lilith that came to visit me. And in some ways, this felt like another part of the divine feminine, not the safe and warm womb side of the feminine, but this real rage, wild expression that was deeply rooted underneath this wounded masculine. And somehow I needed to go on the journey with the masculine in order to uncover her. And I was fascinated by Lilith. I was studying a little bit on the ancient Kabbalah at the time. And, you know, I heard the story about, you know, her being the first wife of Adam and that sense of rejecting, you know, the traditional wife role to be, you know, to kind of, but was ostracized into that demonic element, you know, demonized for the choices that she made. But within the Kabbalistic tree, she was appearing as the one that held the vessels of the tree in the shadow world. So not the tree of life, but the tree that was kind of deep in the shadow world. So that sense of this ancient wound was coming through in Lilith. And I wanted to be close to her. So I made a mask to explore her and bring her and embody her in some way. And that was kind of the journey that I had, was that embodiment of a much more rageful, angry, wild element to the divine feminine that sort of wanted to speak to me and felt forgotten when I was writing my story. And I ended up writing a story about Lilith coming to Earth. And that's why, Lila, when you were saying about this star coming to Earth, and she's connected to a young boy in Wales who has a grail, and she's searching for the grail. She's searching for this small cup because it's the part of her, or the part of the divine feminine, that's fragmented, and she's trying to find, because she doesn't just want to be the wild rage. She also is the womb, the safety, the comfort. And I just think it's so interesting how she also came from another world. She comes down for me through this tree and enters in this way. So really incredible how it all connects.
Well, I must respond because on Saturday I gave a presentation and I talked about, wider context, but I talked about Lilith, and I and in relation to the mystical Kabbalah. And Lilith was the sort of wife, partner of Samael, who is known as a fallen angel. And they, unfortunately, represent the evil that surrounds the tree of life. And she's also associated, or she is, the crooked serpent. I mean, because there are two serpents, one is the straight and one is the crooked, and they are mentioned in the Bible. A crooked serpent was killed, I think, by God because of her power, and the crooked serpent is Lilith. And there are versions in which those powers, which are associated with serpents and evil, are associated with great wisdom and compassion and vision. So what we see here is that's exactly what Inna was saying. It's the exile of the feminine, and anything that is evil and outcast was projected on her in a way. So Lilith is the projection. She is being projected upon, and not necessarily what she is, because in the myth of Gilgamesh, which I'm sure you all know, she's this wonderful creature who lives on a tree, having this wild kind of voice, and she's just roaming around free and happy and singing, and she has a serpent and she has a bird, and you know, she has her animals as well, but she's not necessarily a pure evil, because in the Kabbalistic writings, I mean, there are spells to protect women from Lilith, because she's going to kill the babies, or she's going to kidnap them, and so there are many, you know, writings around her, and various spells and legends, many legends.
Yeah, coming to this territory, we just kind of like meet so much this myths and stories about dark evil side of divine feminine. And actually, at this moment, I was thinking about kind of, when we think about yin yang, yeah, sign, this black and white, there is no evil and good. There is just moving of energy, just phases of our being, how our life, how kind of like all kind of like universe is functioning. It's a universal law. How can universal law be evil or kind of demonized? This and kind of like putting this kind of like black and white dualistic view, kind of like antagonizing it. It's actually giving us the reason hate people, fight people, give a reason for the war. Because when we think about natural kind of like how it's, for example, exists in nature, when we think about earth and seed in earth, we never think that the seed in darkness, in evil place. No, it's where it's supposed to be. And the same with human soul. When it's come to the dark place, what we say like night of the soul, it's a place where soul will grow. Soul came there for a reason. Something should happen. Some energy should find the power and make this kind of growing, kind of like power coming to life, you know. That's why, and also there are many myths, for example, in indigenous people myth, where goddess represents sun, when sun is goddess. So this dark and light it's not necessary so kind of like straightforward. And right now, I recently met her. She's on my table. I want to show her. This sculpture, which I was going through the flea market and saw her on a display. And so I realized that it's a meeting was arranged before. So she's on my table now. And I made an exploration who she is and what the goddess she is, because Celeste told me it's Shakti. Yeah, but yeah. So I made whole way to exploring it, and I find out that it's a unique Nepalese sculpture of Guan, actually. Guan, who she has water of life in one hand, and she has 6 hands. I will not tell about everything, but one of her hands has the jewel for fulfilling the wish fulfilling jewel. And so, and Guan is goddess of compassion, first of all. Yeah, we all know this. And then I think about when this water of life and magic of wish fulfilling jewel. I'm thinking about this wholeness of being in her figure, actually, where she she represents creative power of humans, divine feminine, represent creative power of humans. And surely for people who want to be in control, who want to have power, who are fighting for power, they are not interested in creative power of humans. They want humans to be kind of good robots, to be good working slaves. They want to keep us happy, but still they want us to work hard, and they don't want us to create their own reality. Otherwise it will be kind of like a mess, like chaos. Yeah, she represents chaos too. But this is a creative chaos, the chaos where life is being born. That's why kind of like canceling something, telling it's evil, we are just canceling ourselves. We're canceling, we are splitting ourselves. And setting inside us this conflict that between creative side, between the power and some obedience, something else, responsibility, for example. Yeah, and but divine feminine is where we should learn about natural cause of things, and we see her representation in nature, and we see how nature is harmonic. But what we had in the recent years, we had all our big shows about nature. It's about animals killing each other, about how nature is cruel, how it's kind of like wild power, which we should fight, which should protect ourselves. It's already kind of like setting this conflict between us and nature, like we should be scared of it. Demonizing a relationship between animals, between there are so much material where animals supporting each other, when they're collaborating, but they show us only cruelty, like when someone's killing, but this killing, it's to support their life. It's a circle of life. So we should not, it's very kind of like not good thing to set this black and white view on all things. Yeah.
It's amazing that about this goddess of compassion, I saw her in a temple, in the Jade Temple in Shanghai, and it's just, I was very moved by this experience, and then I made a short video about the goddess of compassion. I mean, I can't show it here, but it is actually inspired by this image of the many hands that she has just giving. And, when you see people worshiping her, it's something that we in the West are not used to. We don't have this, Western people do not worship gods and goddesses in the same way Eastern people, Eastern cultures do. It's just a completely different mindset in the temple. But it is an amazing image of this endlessly creative sense of giving and compassion, which is what is really needed in our world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about the split as well that you were talking about, Inna, and I think that this is kind of one of the most kind of eroding things that goes on in our world, is that one thing is good and one thing is evil, because it's split. Not only does it create a split on a conscious level, but I think it creates a split in the psyche. So although we can see it happening and unfolding in the day-to-day life, it's actually happening as well on a deeper internal level, but we just don't have access to all lenses and all faces and all parts of, the divine feminine and, the divine masculine. This idea that everything is dancing in us rather than I'm that and I'm not that. Like you reject some parts of you and, through a Jungian perspective, then we know that just gets buried into the shadow, that just gets repressed. And those parts of you that you say are not you, they will come out and they will find you in other ways. And I think this is the issue, isn't it? It's like the idea of good and evil is this splitting. And what happens then is that you do have more war and conflict, irrationally, rather than the natural creative destruction that nature offers, which is the birth, the death, the recreation, the destruction, the creation again, this cycle. And, the chaos and the destruction is not welcomed, is it? It's like everything has to stay in order. It has to, but this is not the way nature works. Nature works through cycles. We even can look at the seasons of where we are now, coming out of the winter, coming out of the time of the dark, being underneath the soil, into the spring. And we know that the seasons will eventually shed their leaves again in the autumn. And there's some kind of a death, there's some kind of a change of cycle. And nature has all those faces. We don't need to just see nature as the benevolent guide, and we don't need to see it as the cruel guide. It has all of these expressions, and it's us that we put these labels, don't we? We put these labels on it, when really it's just a cycle. It's just a cycle, and it's like almost the trying to make sense of it takes away its essence. It's that when you categorize and label the good and the bad, that's when we lose the essence of creation. The essence of creation that, is personified by the divine feminine, the importance of compassion. But at the same time, there are times where the opposite is also moving through the world. So how do we hold all of these different paradoxes and polarities without moving into one and saying, this is me, I am this? Yeah.
I want to say about another power goddess, which is so demonized, so criminalized nowadays. It's her sexuality. And talking about, for example, spiritual practices, we know like people working with Kundalini energy and this sexual energy, which being transcended, and this energy helps person to open up to the world and perceive world on different level. And why we also have all those poetic, beautiful stories about people in love, about true love, they are become divine in their love. They're transforming, transcending in their love, in their sexual relationships. And sex, which is actually the way to transcend, the way to come to different vibrations, different energy, and different actually psychic and physical powers. Sex become criminalized, violence, rape, and shame. And it's put on this side, on the dark side. All this what connected to the sex. For example, Christian religion was just cleaned away, making Jesus virgin, making Mother Mary virgin, kind of distorting, lying in every step of these stories, and creating some sterilized reality. And how, for example, our daughters feel in this world, how our women feel in this world, where the power which they have, a creative power, is being demonized. And one of the reasons why I'm having this conversation is that's recently I was speaking with my daughter and my nieces, who are all teenage girls and very curious about life. But they all I felt in them their sadness about that the girl depends on male gaze and how they are perceived in the world. And they don't have their own feeling of power, their own value, because this value comes from divine feminine, actually, from acknowledging this energy and power in yourself. And in one conversation with my daughter, she was very angry about me touching the subject of sex, and I just told her two words. Sex is sacred. 3 words. And suddenly I felt like she relaxed. She stopped fighting me. She kind of heard me. And I was thinking, oh my God, that's what actually we need. We need to return this knowledge about sex is sacred, to recover our relationships between men and women, to recover our relationship with nature and life. That's very one of the subjects I'm going to explore in my art in future.
Yeah, it was the work that on the sacredness of sex and the polarity, the coming together of the masculine and the feminine, was very important in the esoteric movement of early 20th century. And my work, Gaia Mysterious Rhythms, which was part of my PhD, which was a screen dance, and also I wrote a monograph around it. It was inspired by a book by the unfortunate, The Sea Priestess. And during the time, there was a notable Isis revival. And I explored this in depth, an academic essay and a book chapter. And the goddess Isis played a central role in Western esoteric traditions, particularly within the circles of the Order of the Golden Dawn. Mm-hmm. And later in 1924, she became the focal point of the Unfortunate Society of the Inner Light. And so these people were bringing these ideas, exactly what you've just said, Inna, into the center of attention. And one of the key figures in this revival was Moina Matters. She was the first initiate of the Golden Dawn, who was also the first woman to publicly embody the goddess Isis as a priestess in ritual ceremonies. And according to Moina Matters, Isis appeared to her in a dream, authorized her to perform the rites of Isis in public. So beginning in 1899, Moina and her husband launched the Isis movement, which involved dramatic ritual performances. And these ceremonies were sometimes held in secret locations in Paris, and at the other times they staged publicly at Theatre La Bodinière, which was very fashionable at the time. And, you know, there were mixed of people, kind of artists and stage people and aristocrats and anarchists. They were all kind of gathering there. So these immersive events invited audience participation, with Moina and her husband performing as an Egyptian priest and priestess, invoking the primordial essence of Isis. The revival of the goddess was also deeply intertwined with the suffragette movement, because the Golden Dawn promote equality between the sexes, but it's not the type of equality you describe, that women can be like men. It's actually bringing the divine feminine in women, and but their interaction in terms of spirituality or their roles, they were on equal footing. The women were, the feminine was as important as the masculine. There was no competition, but each had very particular kind of qualities. And together they created this blending that was supposed to basically save humanity according to their, theology and ideas. But this is very similar to what we're talking about these days. So unlike many other esoteric orders of the time, both men and women could serve as priests and priestesses equally and together. And this was a radical stance at the turn of the 20th century. And the other interesting thing is that Moina Matter, because I wrote about her, developing also artwork around her, she was originally Mina. Her name was Mina. And she was an artist. She was admitted to the Slade School of Art in 1880. And that was a pioneering institution that had, since its founding in 1871, it offered women equal educational opportunities alongside men. So it encouraged female students through scholarship. So the Slade was a progressive force in art education, encouraging women to be artists. That was really radical as well. So Moina herself was awarded a scholarship in 1883. She started very young and she received 4 certificates for her drawings, but she invested all her time and energies in creating ritualistic work. And hardly any of her work survive, but she also left some writings which I reflected on, and I think that they are very visionary and relevant to our time. So she was also a performance art pioneer, because she was the first woman artist to design and choreograph performances performing the goddess. She was embodying the goddess, but as her priestess Anawi. That was her name, and it's kind of some kind of an Egyptian variation, ancient Egyptian variation, modern style. So the rise of the feminine was deeply connected to the social and cultural movements of modernity. So these artistic and spiritual revolutions were not separate from broader social shifts and cultural shift, and they were part of the largest transformation of consciousness and gender roles that shaped the 20th century. And I think that what we see now is a continuation and even a return to their ideas that were forgotten after the Second World War. So because they were active kind of until the end of the First World War, though during the Second World War, the Society of Inner Light and the Unfortunates were very active in doing rituals to prevent the Germans entering the British islands. Yeah. So I think that we have amazing history, and which is not just mythology, it's real history and knowledge to draw from. And but I really feel that it, like you all say, was lost somewhere. And the New Age muddled it a little bit, although I obviously think it has been a very important movement. And also the various feminist waves had various attitudes and still have various attitudes towards the feminine, which sometimes contradict one another. For example, Inna, what you said about women, young women feeling kind of very uncomfortable about their femininity. It's also to do with sexualization of women on social media. I mean, you just, you know, which make women, again, kind of lost. I'm sure young women not knowing what role they should play and how they should look. I mean, because this is really in our face at the moment. And there are conflicts in the feminist movements about it. Some say that these sexualized women are empowering themselves by objectifying their sex, basically, and others says that it's a return to women just showing for the male gaze. So I think that there are a lot of different conflicting kind of lenses at the moment, and it's very difficult sometimes to make sense, especially if you're young and you're just beginning your journey in life.
And I suppose in that kind of in that time, like I was saying about, kind of when you're a teenager as well, you're still kind of exploring the inner masculine and feminine within you. And I remember kind of in like in the 90s, there was the Ladette movement. And this was maybe more in the UK than anywhere else, but it was young girls who were really famous. They were kind of TV presenters, but they were all acting like men. So they were called the Ladettes. And what's really interesting in their journey with this kind of masculine is that now, they're in their like mid 40s, early 50s. They have become the pioneers of talking about menopause, talking about perimenopause. They've written books about kind of the importance of the cycles of women. So somehow, by kind of embracing or exploring that masculine energy within themselves and integrating it so that it's not coming from an external place, that they were able to then, in their later years, share something of what I would say is the divine feminine cycles, isn't it? To be able to go through the ages and stages and be vocal about women's bodies and be vocal about, the changes that women go through. And I think it's really fascinating how that came from this Ladette movement. This came from a time of women exploring their masculine identities. We can do it. If they can do it, we can do it energy that somehow took away the censorship of the feminine. So to me, there's always that sense of that we have to go almost to the other side, the opposite, in order to uncover maybe the deeper aspects of the masculine and the feminine, you know, coming into that divine dance. And you know, that was my experience with Lilith. It was actually a masculine journey, a journey with a masculine that uncovered the deeper divine feminine that was happening.
I can definitely
yeah.
resonate with this, because I feel that, you know, when I say that my protagonists were boys or men, and in the 90s I was kind of not confused, but I had more than one persona. I mean, there was a very masculine side to me as well, you know, which I sometimes even confused with my own identity. So I was not always strictly into the goddess, you know. I was experimenting between the masculine and the feminine. I think it's very much part of being an artist. It's, you work with characters and you work with personas. So you can't just be one thing, you know. You are many things. You are many personalities and archetypes and characters. And yes, and after I finished Gaia, I completed the film, which was all about the feminine, and I then decided I want to work with a man, and I want to go through the same journey through a man perspective. So that's what I did. So it's like, because I felt it was not planned. It's very much a journey of kind of intuitive insight. It's not as if now I want to do this and now I want to do that. It's just the way things unfold. But what you say now, MaryRita, is very important, because I feel that people are not aware of the journey that led these women to be able to have this wisdom to talk about the feminine now, you know, because they embraced both aspects. So they can relate to the feminine from a broader experience, because they were never just women. I mean, they were.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's interesting that recently when I was talking on some meeting about feminine season, a kind of season of winter, and we were talking about feminine and masculine energy in us, which are how they react in our bodies, what they inspire. And some woman was talking about how the male voice was making her very insecure and anxious about not doing good enough. And at this moment, I started to think about this animus inside me. And I recognized that actually I also have this voice. And this voice is always kind of like very kind of worrying if I'm doing enough, kind of, and asking me that why you're lazy, do. And at the moment when I actually recognized this voice as animus in me, I suddenly become very in peace with it, because before I was really suffering. But when I recognize that this is my masculine side just calling me for action, and this is okay. It does not mean that I'm doing something wrong. Just I'm in period of my feminine nurturing energy, and I just should say, just be quiet, just wait for you, your time will come. It's like being in harmony in those masculine and feminine energies in your body, recognizing them, honoring them, and keeping them kind of like not letting them take over or kind of bully you sometimes.
It's very interesting what you just said about the animus, because Jung's wife and the psychologists, the early women psychologists who work with him, specifically say that women need to befriend the animus in them. They must, actually. I mean, his wife insisted that a woman must work on her relationship with her inner animus to be able to have an impact in culture and society. Otherwise, she would never come to be who she really needs to be. You know, she won't be able to fulfill her whatever a vocation, a destiny, you can call it whatever you want, because she won't be able to do anything really. I mean, she'll be totally passive and do, the most minimal kind of activities throughout her life. So it takes time to recognize the animus within, and because my experience of the animus within, my animus within was actually never negative, but the animus that I experienced that was negative was the external animus. It's those male teachers who told me that I am this and that, whatever. I'm not getting into what they said about me. But very critical and harsh on whatever I was doing. But my inner animals, I discovered him sometime in the late 80s or early 90s, and I felt that I found my voice. I remember, I'm not going to tell the story now, but I remember exactly where and when it happened. And since then, I've been working with him. And recently, I even started to work on our relationship even more through active imagination. And I find it very useful. So, so women must, according to the Jungian thought, form a relationship with the male inside, with the animus inside, in order to even be women. I mean, in the true sense of the word. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
they
it's interesting.
yeah,
No,
sorry,
please,
sorry.
Inna. Please, Inna.
Yeah, they also need to understand what their feminine part is, what the power is. Because we have this male-centered society, and all male qualities are very kind of like appreciated and acknowledged and respected. There are the power of passivity, for example, being passive, being in a flow, being just letting things happen around you. What it is, it's magical, weaving life, creating life, not acting. Just let things happen, come to your life and manifest. That is power of feminine. And if a woman does not know that she has this power, she thinks she only has this kind of like masculine way of doing, like work hard, be quick, sharp, active. No, there is a huge power in feminine as well. And this is why our girls need to be educated, especially about feminine magic, about power of letting be, letting go. And at the same, yes.
I was going to say, I feel like I that resonates so much for me, especially working in an all girls school, for several years, that the importance of kind of coming into that sense of flow. But the idea of befriending the animus, I think, is the key as well, because when the animus is unconscious, that's when it's ruling, going, you need to do, because you haven't kind of met that part of you. So it almost operates without your knowing. But through the befriending of the animus, it's almost like then there's space for the being of the feminine to come through, because you've created some kind of a channel of relationship rather than this dominating energy that can push us and be like, you need to do. But when there's a befriending that's happened, that energy no longer is in control. I don't feel like then it's dominating. Then you've integrated, the animus has been integrated into you, and the space for the feminine opens up. It's almost like, now I know that sometimes, this animus relationship is there, but it doesn't control me. And that opens up the beautiful weaving of allowing the receptivity of the feminine to come through. And that was my experience with the animus. And because I feel that if you do not befriend your animus, then the animus will personify in other people. It will come to you through other people, and you will never own that part of you. It'll always just be someone else will hold on to it because it'll be projected outwards. When, like, your daughter and nieces were talking about the male gaze, that's almost like saying that's handing over the power, isn't it? Handing over the power of the external animus, when really, when we have that friendship on the inside and we've created that relationship with the animus, it's just so empowering to have that within you, to open up to the feminine. Almost the feminine part of me became much more resonant once I'd done the work with the animus. It was then that I could feel that part of me so much more.
Yeah, it's very important knowledge, MaryRita. Now, what you've just discussed, because I came across, through being a teacher and lecturer, I came across women's groups where they just embrace the feminine, and like young students, in their 30s maybe. And so they cherish the passivity and the letting go and the flow. But at the same time, they become extremely negative to anything which is sort of representing the animus, like intellectual thinking or intellectual writing, so they find it very difficult and they become antagonist to, for example, academic writing or any other knowledge or any other activity which take them out of their kind of feminine, passive, intuitive, flowing state. I mean, I really noticed that. It's not my place to sort of interfere. I just kind of observing. But what I'm saying, it's about learning to balance these qualities. It's also something that needs to be taught or educated, and I don't know where this education can happen. I mean, it could be through a therapist, but it needs to be a psychotherapist, somebody who's really qualified and can do it. Or obviously you won't get it in ordinary universities, a mainstream education. It's very rare. There are some schools that allow it, but they are very rare. So I'm not sure how one can go about it. It's like going through life and experiencing things. Like in my case, nobody taught me, specifically, this is how you should do, and this is how you should behave. I was seeking, searching, and finding, and making many mistakes on the way, not knowing what is right or wrong or whatever.
I also was thinking about how funny it is that we are struggling to befriend our animus, but we have absolutely mirroring situation for men. I had very weird, strange experience on a transpersonal psychology conference last year. It was beautiful gatherings of very inspiring people. But every time when in conversation with a man, it was specifically about male part of gathering, I was mentioning divine feminine or great mother or mother earth. Any of those words were kind of out. I suddenly saw some kind of reaction of rejection, like people were closing their inner doors for me, that like I'm one of those mad women who are kind of like about, or it was absolutely some conscious ancient fear coming out. And I was, in terms of thinking about animus and anima, I was thinking that actually, because of this distortion of hidden presence of goddess, not being aware about her, not working with those energies consciously. Men actually become so deprived of those energies and recognizes anima inside themselves, the suppressing of emotions, and then when those emotions, when this power suddenly started coming out of you, you feel it's like a disaster. It's like you feel it's like ruining you. And the same, they feel like return of the goddess means kind of destruction and chaos and violence, because the suppression of anima actually, and not working with those energies inside yourself, not being educated about it, this, not being open to it. And this is actually a physical manifestation of goddess Exile for so many years, because we don't recognize these powers, we're not honoring those powers in the world. And I believe that actually this epidemic of mental illness right now, it's consequences of this. It just because now we have intensifying time, so everything, all energy are intensifying, and kind of all kind of like illnesses or diseases or something you would need to be pay attention to coming on the surface. And we see this problem, like evident problem of not working with divine feminine powers and not recognizing anima in a society soul and in a collective soul. This.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said is reflecting what many feel, and because I hear it from younger women, you know, from younger students. So, I mean, it's going across more than one generation, and what, you know, you just said, and there is suffering. There is real suffering as a result of. Maybe we can even say that both anima and animus are being, in a way, rejected. I mean, that they are in their entirety, in what they meant to be, you know, as archetypes. They are not being regarded enough. They are not being accepted, and they are not being known as what that should be known for, because the animus is not just an evil, you know, general or some kind of horrible priest, you know, and the feminine is not just a stupid woman, or it's just crazy. You see, I'm just exaggerating here. I mean, we're just not using these archetypes in the way they should be utilized and integrated into the psyche, the personal psyche, the collective psyche. And I think that it's a conversation that maybe we should continue to have through different lenses and different topics, because we can approach it not just by talking about the divine feminine as a topic, but as other topics, through other topics as well. And what you both mirrored is also what I hear, like I say, also from students and from various artists and from women artists. There is something here that obviously needs to be further discussed. So as we wrap up this conversation, we acknowledge that our exploration is ongoing. We will return to the divine feminine and explore many related and other fascinating topics. Click subscribe to stay connected with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. Until the next podcast, stay well and inspired.
To the Transpersonal Arts Podcast.